Hey everyone, welcome back to another audio book that we're going to start today. I just got back from like 2 weeks of just living on the road, living at hotels up in the Northwest, and I logged into my account here. I hadn't logged in like pretty much all the whole 2 weeks, and one of the comments or someone in the comments, his name was Jake. He says, I found a new bombshell info about the tablets in a book called The Lost Keys of Masonry, The Legend of Hiram Abiff, Abiff, or it's Abiff, not sure if I pronounced it right. It says, written by Manly P. Hall, and he says, after the foreword, the book starts on page 33, and the heading, The Emerald Tablets of Hermes. So he actually emailed me the PDF of the book, and I actually went ahead and ordered the hard copy of the book from Amazon. I could not find any free audiobooks of this on YouTube or BitChute, so I figured, what the heck, let's give it a read. And so I'm always into learning this kind of stuff. So, The Lost Keys of Freemasonry, The Legend of Hiram Abiff, or Abiff. I'm just going to call him Abiff for now on because it's easier. I might have to correct myself in the future. So this is my first time even looking at this. It says, by Manly P. Hall, author of Occult Masonry, The Sacred Magic of the Kabbalah, Initiates of the Flame, The Ways of the Lonely Ones, etc. And then it says, Proem, like Proem, by Reynold E. Blight. And then it says 33rd degree next to that, so I'm assuming he is a 33rd degree Mason. It says illustrated by J. Augustus Knapp, and next to that it says 32nd degree. So let's scroll down. It says this was published in 1924. This is like a 100-year-old book we're gonna read here. How exciting! All right, let's keep scrolling down. So I'm scrolling down through the PDF of this right now. I haven't received the actual hard copy in the mail. All right, it says Proem by Reynold E. Blight, 33rd degree, and then it says K period T period. K. I wonder what those are, the K and the T. I wonder if that stands for Knights Templar. I'm not sure, but it just says a K period and a T period. I could be mistaken, but I think that means Knights Templar, maybe. I don't know. All right, here we go. Reality forever eludes us. Infinity mocks our puny efforts to imprison it in definition and dogma. Our most splendid realizations are only adumbrations of light. In his endeavors, man is but a mollusk seeking to encompass the ocean, yet man may not cease his struggle to find God. There is a yearning at the soul of him that will not let him rest, an urge that compels him to attempt the impossible, to attain the unattainable. He lifts feeble hands to grasp the stars, and despite a million years of failure and millenniums of disappointment, the soul of man springs heavenward with even greater avidity than when the race was young. He pursues even through the flying ideal, eternally slips from his embrace. Even though he never clasps the goddess of his dreams, he refuses to believe that she is a phantom. To him, she is only reality. He reaches upward and will not be content until the sword of Orion is in his hands and glorious Arcturus gleams from his breasts. Man is Parsifal, searching for the sacred cup, Sir Lawnful, adventuring for the Holy Grail. Life is a divine adventure, a splendid quest. Language fails. Words are mere ciphers, and who can read the riddle? These words we use, what are they but vain shadows of form and sense. I wonder if that's a reference to, like gematria, like how and I believe, if correct me if I'm not, I might be mistaken, but if in Hebrew or and this is like, I think, Jewish as well, gematria, it's like where it's like they encode words, and the letters are also linked to numbers, and the numbers are like representations of what the words mean. All right, let's continue. We strive our cloth, our highest thought, with verbal trappings in our brother may see and understand, and when we describe a saint, he sees a demon. When we would present a wise man, he beholds a fool. Fire upon you, he cries, thou too art a fool. So wisdom drapes her truth with symbolism and covers her insight with allegory. Creeds, rituals, poems are parables and symbols. The ignorant take them literally and build for themselves prison houses of words. With bitter speech and bitterer taunt denounce those who will not join them in the dungeon. Before the rapt vision of the seer, dogma and ceremony, legend and trope dissolve and fade, and he sees behind the fact the truth, behind the symbol the reality. Through the shadow shines ever the perfect light. You know what I think? I think what he's talking about right there when he says, hang on, let me find that sentence again. When he says the ignorance, when he's talking about the words and the symbols and the parables and all this and the poems, and then it says the ignorant take them literally and build for themselves prison houses of words, and with bitter speech and bitter taunt denounce those who will not join them in the dungeon. I think what he's referring to there is how language creates reality, and we can see this now in the with the English language, how the when you study etymology, like what words mean and where they really come from. Like, for example, the word mortgage, like when people get a mortgage for their home, that comes from the word mort, which means like mortuary, where the dead go. It has to do with death, where the dead people go. And then gauge, and this is Latin, if I'm not mistaken, 2 words in Latin, mort, and then gauge. And gauge means a pledge or a contract. So the word mortgage means death pledge. And isn't it funny how when people get a mortgage in the United States and they speak English, I mean, this is not just true to the United States, but this is I live in USA, so I'm using it as an example. The average person that works a full-time job and gets a mortgage, it takes them their entire life to pay off that house. It literally is like a death pledge. They're working to pay that off until they die. And then with the property tax every year, they're still paying it off. They keep paying for it their whole life. It literally is, a mortgage literally is a death pledge. And there's all kinds of other words, that we can talk about too. Like government comes from Latin, gubernare, which means to control, and mente, which means mind. Government means to control the mind. And the language that people speak is creating their reality. And a lot of them don't even know what these words really mean or where they really come from. And I think that's what he's referring to when in that whole paragraph right there. All right, next part says, what is a Mason? He is a man who in his heart has been duly and truly prepared, has been found worthy and well qualified, has been admitted to the fraternity of builders, been invested with certain passwords and signs by which he may enable to work and receive wages as a master mason, and travel in foreign lands in search of that which was lost, the word. Down through the misty vistas of the ages rings a clarion declaration, and although the very heavens echo to the reverberations, but few hear and fewer understand. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Here then is the eternal paradox. The Word is lost, yet it is ever with us. The light that illumines the distant horizons shines in our hearts. Thou wouldst not seek me hadst thou not found me. We travel afar only to find that which we hunger for at home. As Victor Hugo says, the thirst for the infinite proves infinity. That we seek lives in our souls. This, the unspeakable truth, the unutterable perfection, the author has set before us in these pages. Not a Mason himself, he has read the deeper meaning of the ritual. Not having assumed the formal obligations, he calls upon all mankind to enter into the Holy of Holies. Not initiated into the physical craft, he declares the secret doctrine that all may hear. Not initiated into the physical craft. I wonder if he's talking like some multi-dimensional kind of thing or something. All right, with vivid allegory and profound philosophical disquisition, he expounds the sublime teachings of Freemasonry, older than all religions, as universal as human aspiration. It is well, blessed are the eyes that see, and the ears that hear, and the heart that understands. All right, so that was the end of that first little proem. Proem is what that was titled. And then the next part, it says, forward to the second edition, the kindly attitude with which the first edition of this work was received has prompted the author to enlarge it and to send it forth again, trusting that it may assist in clearing up some of the mysteries which have long shrouded Masonry's place in the spiritual, ethical, and scientific world. And then now it's at the table of contents. I'm going to scroll past that. And it's got some illustrations here. Actually, let me just read you the table of contents really quick. So we just read the proem. It says forward to the second edition. We got the introduction. And then right after the introduction, the very next part is the Emerald Tablets of Hermes. We have a prologue, In the Fields of Chaos. Then it goes into chapter 1, the candidate. Chapter 2, the entered apprentice. Chapter 3, the fellow craft. Chapter 4, the master mason. Chapter 5, the qualifications of a true mason. And then it goes into the epilogue, In the Temple of the Cosmos, a message to the order of De Mole Masonic aspirations. And then let's see what we got next. Okay, introduction. So let's go. We're going to read this part. It says, Masonry is essentially a religious order. Most of its legend and allegories are of a sacred nature. Much of Masonry is woven into the structure of Christianity. We have learned to consider our own religion as the only inspired one, and this probably accounts for a great many of the misunderstandings existing in the world today concerning the place occupied by Masonry in the spiritual ethics of our race. A religion is a divinely inspired code of morals. A religious person is one inspired to nobler living by this code. He is identified by the code which is his source of illumination. Thus, we may say that a Christian is one who receives his spiritual ideals of right and wrong from the message of the Christ, while a Buddhist is one who molds his life into the archetype of moral status given by the great Gautama or one of the other Buddhas. All doctrines which seek to unfold and preserve that invisible spark in man, which he has named spirit, are said to be spiritual. Those which ignore this invisible element of concentrate entirely Those who ignore this invisible element and concentrate entirely upon the visible are said to be material. There is in religion a wonderful place of balance where the materialist and spiritist meet on the plane of logic reason. Science and theology are two ends of a single truth. but the world will never receive the full benefit of their investigations until they have made peace with each other and labor hand in hand for the accomplishments of the great work, the liberation of spirit and intelligence from the three-dimensional graves of ignorance, superstition, and fear. That which gives man a knowledge of himself can be inspired only by the self, and God is the self in all things. In truth, he is the inspiration and the thing inspired. It has been stated in Scripture that God was the Word, and that the Word was made flesh. Man's task now is to make flesh reflect the glory of that Word, which is within the soul itself. It is this task which has created the need of religion, not one faith alone, but many creeds, each searching in its own way, each meeting the needs of individual people, each emphasizing one point above all others. 12 fellow craftsmen are exploring the 4 points of a compass. Are not these 12 the 12 great world religions, each seeking in its own way for that which was lost in the ages past, and the quest of which is the birthright of man? Is not the quest for reality in a world of illusions the task for which each comes into the world? We are here to gain balance in a sphere of unbalance, to find rest in a restless thing, to unveil illusion, and to slay the dragon of our own animal natures. As David, king of Israel, gave to the hands of his son Solomon the task he could not accomplish, so each generation gives to the next the work of building the temple, or rather, rebuilding the dwelling of the Lord, which is in the Mount Moriah. Truth is not lost, yet it must be sought for and found. Reality is ever present, dimensionless yet all-prevailing. Man, creature of attitudes and desires, and servants of impressions and opinions, cannot, with the wandering unbalance of an untutored mind, learn to know that which himself does not possess. As man attains a quality, he discovers that quality and recognizes about him the thing newborn within himself. Man is born with eyes, yet it is only after long years of sorrow that he learns to see clearly and in harmony with the plan. He is born with senses, but it is only after long experience and fruitless strivings that he brings these senses to the temple and lays them as offerings upon the altar of the great Father, who alone does all things well with understanding. Man is in truth born in the sin of ignorance, but with the capacity for understanding. He has a mind capable of wisdom, a heart capable of feeling, and a hand strong for the great work in life, truing the rough ashlar into the perfect stone. What more can any creature ask for than an opportunity, a chance to prove the thing he is, the dream that inspires him, the vision that leads him on? We have no right to ask for wisdom. In whose name do we beg for understanding? By what authority do we demand happiness? None of these things is the birthright of any creature, yet all may have them if they will cultivate within themselves the thing that they desire. There is no need of asking, nor does any deity bow down to give these things that he desires. Man is given by nature a gift, and that gift is the privilege of labor. Through labor, he learns all things. Religions are a group of people gathered together in the labor of learning. The world is a school. We are here to learn, and being here proves our need of instruction. Every living creature is struggling to break the strangling bonds of limitation, that pressing narrowness which destroys vision and leaves the life without an ideal. Every soul is engaged in the great work, the labor of personal liberation from the ruts of ignorance. The world is a great prison. Its bars are the unknown, and each is a prisoner until at last he learns the right to tear these bars from their molding sockets and pass, illuminated and inspired, into the darkness which becomes lighted by the presence. All people of the world seek the temple where God dwells, where the Spirit of great truth illuminates the shadows of human ignorance, but they know not which they turn, nor where this temple is. The midst of dogma surrounds them. Ages of thoughtlessness bind them in. Limitation weakens them and inhibits their footsteps. They wander in darkness, seeking light, ever failing to realize that the light is in the heart of the darkness. To few who have found him, God reveals himself. These in turn reveal him to man, striving to tell ignorance the message of wisdom. But seldom does man understand the mystery that has been unveiled. He tries weakly to follow in the steps of those who have attained, but all too often finds the path more difficult than he ever dreamed. So he kneels in prayer before the mountain he cannot climb, and from the top of which gleams forth the light which he is not strong enough to reach nor wise enough to comprehend. He lives the law as he knows it, always fearing in the depth of himself, and he has not read aright the flaming letters in the sky, and that in living the letter of the law he has murdered out the spirit. Man bows humbly to the unknown, peopling the shadows of his own ignorance with saints and saviors, ghosts and specters, gods and demons. Ignorance fears all things and falls terror-stricken before the passing wind. Superstition stands as the monument to ignorance, and before it kneel those who are realizing their own weakness, who see in all things the strength they do not possess, who give to sticks and stones the power to bruise them, who change the beauties of nature into dwelling places of ghouls and ogres. Wisdom fears no thing, but still bows humbly to its own source. While superstition hates all things, wisdom, with its deeper understanding, loves all things, for it has seen the beauty, the tenderness, and the sweetness which underlie life's mystery. Life is the span of time appointed for the accomplishment. Every fleeting moment is an opportunity, and those who are great are the ones who have recognized life as the opportunity for all things. Arts, sciences, and religions are monuments standing for what humanity has already accomplished. They stand as memorials to the unfolding mind of man, and through their avenues man passes to more efficient and more intelligent methods of attaining prescribed results. Blessed are those who can profit by the experiences of others and can add to that which has already been built, their inspiration made real, their dream made practical. Those who give man the things he needs are seldom appreciated in their own age, but are later recognized as the saviors of the human race. Masonry is a structure built of experience. Each stone is a sequential step in the unfolding of intelligence. The shrines of Masonry are ornamented by jewels of 1,000 ages. Its rituals rings with the words of enlightened seers and illuminated sages. 100 religions have brought their gifts of wisdom to its altar. Arts and sciences unnumbered have contributed to its symbolism. It is more than faith, it is a path of certainty. It is more than a belief, it is a fact. Masonry is a university teaching the liberal arts of sciences of the soul to all who will attend to its words. You know, the liberal arts, and you can look this up, it's called, also referred to as the 7 liberating arts, It's basically teaching people how to systematically question information instead of blindly accept it as fact. So when you learn the 7 liberating arts, it's the first 3 things, or the first part of it is called the trivium, and it's grammar, logic, rhetoric, which is to systematically question who, what, where, why, or who, what, when, where, why, and how. And in that order, you have to systematically learn how to question things in that order before you blindly accept it. And that's the part that was removed out of the education system in the United States by the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, who financed the education system. And they did that specifically to dumb people down so that they could brainwash them and enslave them. So a lot of this stuff, that I read about and I talk about on this YouTube channel, all this ancient knowledge, this is stuff that has systematically been removed from the education system and from the churches as well, in order to dumb people down and enslave them. All right, let's continue. It is a shadow of the great Atlantean mystery school, which stood with all its splendor in the ancient city of the Golden Gates, where now the turbulent Atlantic rolls in unbroken splendor. Okay, so that right there, Atlantean, that's Hermes Thoth. He was an Atlantean king, and pretty much every, if you ever read the Kabbalion, it says in there that there's never been any knowledge and teachings that has been more secretive and more occult than the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus, also known as Thoth by the Egyptians. He was known by Hermes by the Greeks, Thoth by the Egyptians, Mercury as the Romans, the South Americans, well, now South America, they called him Quetzalcoatl. So this dude was known all over the planet. All right, let's continue. Its chairs are seats of learning. Its pillars uphold an arch of universal education, not only in material things, but also in those qualities which are of the spirit. Upon its trestle boards are inscribed the sacred truth of all people and of all nations, and to those who understand its sacred depth has drawn the great reality. Masonry is, in truth, the long-lost thing which all people have sought in all ages. Masonry is the common denominator and the common divisor of human aspiration. Most of the religions of the world are processions. One leads and many follow. In the footsteps of the demigods, man follows in his search for truth and illumination. The Christian follows the gentle Nazarene up the winding slopes of Calvary. The Buddhist also follows his great emancipator through the wanderings in the wilderness. The Mohammedan makes his pilgrimage across the desert sands to the black tent at Mecca. Truth leads and ignorance follows in his train. Wow, that's I couldn't agree with. I couldn't disagree with that statement about how people deify these religious figures and they follow them blindly. And it says, truth leads and ignorance follows in his train. I have witnessed that my entire life growing up in the Christian church. Spirit blazes the trail and matter follows behind. In the world today, ideals live but a moment in their purity before the gathering hosts of darkness snuff out the gleaming spark. The mystery school, however, remains unmoved. It does not bring its light to man. Man must bring his light to it. Ideals coming into the world become idols within a few short hours, but man entering the gates of sanctuary changes the idol back to an ideal. Man is climbing an endless flight of steps with his eyes turned towards the goal at the top. Many cannot see the goal, and only 1 or 2 steps are visible before them. He has learned, however, one great lesson, and that is that as he builds his own character, he is given strength to climb the steps. Hence, a Mason is a builder of the temple of character. He is the architect of a sublime mystery, the gleaming, glowing temple of his own soul. He realizes that he best serves God when he joins with the great architect in building more noble structures in the universe below. This is a lot of similar stuff to what is talked about in the teachings of Hermes and the Emerald Tablets that I previously read on this channel. All who are attempting to attain mystery through constructive efforts are Masons at heart, regardless of sex or religious beliefs. A Mason is not necessarily a member of a lodge. He is any person who tries every day to live the Masonic life and to serve intelligently the needs of the great architect. The Masonic brother pledges himself to assist all other temple builders in whatever extremity life may unfold, and in so doing he pledges himself to every stick and stone, to beast, God, and man, for they all are temple builders, building more noble shrines wherein to worship the universal God. The Masonic Lodge is a mystery school, a place where candidates are taken out of the follies and foibles of the world and are instructed in the mysteries of life, relationships, and the identity of that germ of spiritual essence in them, which is, in truth, the Son of God, beloved of his Father. The Mason views life seriously, realizing that every wasted moment is a lost opportunity, and that omnipotence is gained only through earnestness and endeavor. Above all other relationships, he recognizes the universal brotherhood of living things. The collapsed hands of his lodge reflect his attitude towards all of the world, for he is the comrade of all created things. He realizes also that his spirit is a glowing, gleaming jewel, which he must enshrine within a holy temple built by the labor of his hands, the meditations of his heart, and the aspiration of his soul. Masonry is a religion which is essentially creedless. It is the truer for it. Its brothers bow to truth regardless of the bearer. They serve light instead of wrangling over one who brings it. In this way, they prove that they are seeking to know better and let me read that again. In this way, they prove that they are seeking to know better the will and the dictates of the invincible one. No truer religion exists in all the world than that all creatures gather together in comradeship and brotherhood for the purpose of glorifying one God and of building for him a temple of constructive attitude and noble character. All right, so that was that first section was entitled Part 1, and now this next is entitled Part 2. The average Mason, as well as the modern student of Masonic ideals, little realizes or understands the cosmic obligation which he takes upon himself when he begins his search for the sacred truths of nature as they are concealed in the ancient and modern rituals. He must not lightly consider his vows, and if he would not bring up himself years and ages of suffering, he must cease to consider Masonry as merely a social or fraternal order. He must realize that the mystic teachings, as perpetuated in the modern rites, are sacred, and that powers unseen and unrecognized mold the destiny of those who consciously and of their own free will take it upon themselves the obligation of the craft. Masonry is not a material thing, it is a science of the soul. It is not a creed or doctrine, but a universal expression of the divine wisdom. The coming together of English guilds, or even the building of Solomon's temple, as it is understood today, has little of anything to do with the true origin of Masonry, for Masonry does not ideal with personalities. And then there's a little side note here. It says, this term is used, and it's talking about when they say divine wisdom up there, when I said the coming together of English guilds, or excuse me, sorry, when it says Masonry is not a material thing, it is a science of the soul and is not a creed or doctrine, but a universal expression of divine wisdom. And then it says this term, divine wisdom, is used as synonymous with a very secret and sacred philosophy that has existed for all time and has been the inspiration of great saints and sages of all ages. The perfect wisdom of God revealing itself through a secret hierarchy of the illuminated minds. All right, let's take a little break. I'm going to go get a drink, and then I'll continue. It is neither historical nor archaeological, but in its divine symbolic language perpetuating under certain concrete symbols the divine mysteries of the ancients. Only those who see in a cosmic study a life work, a spiritual inspiration to better thinking, better living, and better acting, with the spiritual attainment of enlightenment as the end, and with the daily life of a true Mason as the means, have gained even the slightest insight into the true mysteries of the ancient and accepted rite. The age of the Masonic school is not to be calculated by hundreds or even thousands of years, for it never had any origin in the worlds of form. The world as we see it is merely an experimental laboratory in which man is laboring to build and express greater and more perfect vehicles. Into this laboratory pours thousands and millions of rays descending from the cosmic hierarchies. These mighty globes and orbs, which focus their energies upon mankind and mold his destiny, do so in an orderly manner, each at his own way and place. I wonder when he says these mighty globes and orbs, if he's talking about the stars. I think that's what he's talking about. Okay, where were we? So it says each in his own way and place. And it is the working of these mystic hierarchies in the universe which forms the pattern around which the Masonic school has been built. For the true lodge of the Masons is the universe. Creedless and religionless, he stands, a master of all faiths, and those who take up the study of Masonry without realizing the depth, the beauty, and the spiritual power of the thing they are analyzing can never gain anything of permanence from their studies. The age of the mystery schools can be traced by the true student back to the dawn of time, hundreds of millions of years, billions of years ago, when the temple of the solar man was in the making. I don't know what when he says the temple of the solar man, and I'm wondering if when he describes man as being solar, if he's talking about how we're like beings of light, and somehow our consciousness is connected to light. Even in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, there's a part where he talks about how man's soul is like bound to a body or bound to a certain star. There's a section in the Emerald Tablets that talks about how man is a soul bound to a star. So like we are beings of light. That was the first temple of the king, and there in the dawn of time were given and laid down the true mysteries of the ancient lodge, and it was the gods of creation and the spirits of the dawn who first tiled the master's lodge. The initiated brothers realizes that his so-called symbols and rituals are merely blinds built by the wise to perpetuate ideas incomprehensible to the average individual. He also realizes the few Masons today know how to appreciate the mystic meanings concealed within these rituals. With religious faith, we perpetuate the form, worshiping it instead of the life. But those who have not gathered the truth from the crystallized ritual, those who have not liberated the spiritual germ from the shell of the empty words, are not Masons, regardless of their physical degrees. So, in Masonry, they have this whole like degrees that you have to go through. It's like you're a first degree and a second degree and all the way up to a 33rd degree. It's like these different like levels, this like hierarchy structure. And it's like, if you want to just skip all that and you want to just go right to the top, just study this kind of stuff. Study the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, study etymology and symbolism, and you'll pass all that. In the work we are taking up, it is not the intention to dwell upon the modern concepts of the craft, but to consider Masonry as it really is to those who know a great cosmic organism whose true brothers and children are tied together not by spoken oaths, but by lives so lived that they are capable of seeing through the blank wall and opening the window which is now concealed by the rubbish of the materiality. When this is done, and the mysteries of the universe unfold before the aspiring candidate, then in truth he discovers what Masonry really is. Its material aspects interest him no longer, for he has unmasked the mystery school, which he is capable of recognizing only when he himself has spiritually become a member of it. There is no doubt in the minds of those who have examined and studied its ancient lore that Masonry, like the universe itself, which is the greatest of all schools, dealing with the unfolding of the threefold principle, for all the universe is governed by the same three kings who are called the builders of the Masonic temple. They are not personalities but principles, great intelligent energies and powers, which in God, man, and the universe have charge of the molding of the cosmic substance into the habitation of the living king. The temple built through millions of years of first unconscious and then conscious effort on the part of every individual who is expressing in his daily life and creating principles of the three kings. The true brother of the ancient craft realizes that the completion of the temple he was building to the king of the universe was a duty, or rather a privilege, which he owed to his God, to his brother, and to himself. He knew that certain steps must be taken, and that his temple must be built according to plan. But today it seems that the plan is lost, for in the majority of the cases Masonry is no longer operative, but is merely a speculative idea and must remain so until each brother, reading the mystery of his symbols and pondering over the beautiful allegories unfolded in his rituals, realizes that he himself contains the keys and the plans so long lost to his craft, and that and that if he would ever learn Masonry, he must unlock its doors with the key filed from the base metals of his own being. From the base metals of his own being. That's an interesting statement right there. True, Masonry is esoteric. It is not a thing of the world. All that we have here is a link, a doorway, through which the student may pass into the unknown. It has nothing to do with things of form, save that it realizes that form is molded by and manifests the life it contains, and the student is seeking to so mold his life that the form will glorify God within whose temple he is slowly building as he awakens one after another the workmen within himself, and sets them to carrying out the plan which has been given him out of the heaven. So far as it is possible to discover, ancient Masonry and the beautiful cosmic allegories that it teaches, perpetuated through hundreds of lodges and ancient mysteries, forms the oldest of mystery schools. Its preservation through the ages has not depended upon itself as an esoteric body of partly evolved individuals, but upon a concealed brotherhood of upon a concealed brotherhood, the esoteric side of Masonry. All the great mystery schools have hierarchies upon the spiritual planes of nature, which are expressing themselves in a world through creeds and organisms. The true student is seeking to lift himself from the esoteric body upward spiritually until he joins the esoteric group, which, without a lodge on the physical plane of nature, is still greater by far than all the lodges, of which it is the central fire. These spiritual instructors of humanity are forced to labor in the concrete world with things comprehensible to the concrete mind. And there comes, through a man, the meaning of the allegories and symbols which surround the esoteric work as soon as he prepares himself to receive them. And then there was a little side note here. It says, this term used by the ancients to designate the esoteric side of the religious ceremonies. The candidate passing through these mysteries was initiated into the mysteries of nature and the hidden side of natural law. And what they're talking about, I believe, is the mystery schools. All right, let's continue. The true Mason realizes that the work of the mystery schools in the world is of an inclusive rather than exclusive nature, and that the only lodge which is broad enough to express his ideals in the one whose dome is the heavens, whose pillars are the corners of creation, whose checkerboard floor is composed of the crossing currents of human emotion, and whose altar is the human heart. Creeds cannot bind the true seeker for truth. The Mason, realizing the unity of all truth, also realizes that the hierarchies laboring with him have given him, in his varying degrees, the mystic spiritual rituals of all the mystery schools in the world. And if he would fill his place in the plan, he must not enter this sacred study for what he can get out of it, but that he may learn how to better to put more, let me read that again. For what he can get out of it, but that he may learn how to, or how better to put more in. Masonry has concealed within the mystery of creation the answer to the problem of existence and the path which the student must walk in order to join those who are really living, who are really the living powers behind the thrones of modern national and international affairs. And he's talking about, people in high positions of political power right there. The true student realizes most of all that is taking the degrees does not make him a Mason. A Mason is not appointed, he is evolved. And he must realize that the position he holds in the exoteric lodge means nothing compared to his position in the spiritual lodge of life. He must forever cast out of his being the idea that he can be told or instructed in the sacred mysteries, or that his being a member of an organization improves him in any way. He must realize that his duty is to build and evolve the sacred teaching in his own being, that nothing but his own purified being can unlock the door to the sealed libraries of human consciousness, and that his Masonic rites must eternally be speculative until he makes them operative by living the life of the mystic Mason. His karmic responsibilities increase with his opportunities. Those who are surrounded with knowledge and opportunity for self-improvement and make nothing of these opportunities are the lazy workmen who will be spiritually, if not physically, cast out of the temple of the king. The Masonic Order is not a social organization, but truly is composed of those who have banded themselves together to learn and apply the principles of mysticism and occult rites. They are, or should be, philosophers, sages, and sober-minded individuals who have dedicated themselves upon living or upon the living altar of the gods, who have vowed by all that they hold dear that the world shall be better, wiser, and happier because they lived. Those who enter these mystic rites and pass between the pillars seeking either prestige or commercial advantage as blasphemers, and while in this world we may count them as successful, they are the cosmic failures who have barred themselves out from the true rite, whose keynote is unselfishness, and whose workers have renounced the things of earth. In ancient times, many years of preparation were required before the neophyte was permitted to enter the temple of the mysteries. In this way, those who were shallow, the curiosity seekers, the faint of heart, and those unable to withstand the temptations of life were not chosen, but automatically withdrew themselves from a price which was greater than they would pay. And he who did pass between the pillars entered the temple realizing his sublime opportunity, his divine obligation, and the mystic privilege which he had earned for himself through the years of special preparation. Only those are true Masons who enter their temple in reverence, who are seeking not the passing things of life, but the treasures which are eternal, whose one's desire in life is to know the true mystery of the craft, that they may join as honest workmen those who have gone before the builders, those who have gone before as builders of the universal temple. The Masonic ritual is not a ceremony, but a life to be lived. Those who are really Masons are those who have dedicated their lives and their souls to the altar of the living flame, and who are glad to labor in any way in the construction of the one universal building, of which they are the workmen of their God and living architect. When we have Masons like this, the craft will again be operative, the flaming triangle will shine forth with greater luster, the dead builder will rise from his tomb, and the lost word so long concealed from the profane will blaze forth again with the power that makes all things new. In the pages that follow, there has been set down a number of thoughts for the study and consideration of temple builders, craftsmen, and artisan alike. They are the keys which, if read, will leave the student still in ignorance, but if lived, will change the speculative Masonry of today into the operative Masonry of tomorrow, when each builder realizes his own place, will see things which he never saw before, not because they were not there, but because he was blind. And there are none so blind as those who will not see. All right, that's the end of that first little section. The next part is entitled The Emerald Tablets of Hermes, and then in parentheses it says Tabula Smaragdina. So we're going to read that in the next video I upload.